Hello and welcome back to El Podo, the Primera RFEF show. We've had yet another weekend of fantastic third-tier action in the Primera Federación, and to talk about it with me is my co-host, Liam Bamridge. Liam, how are you doing this fine evening?
I'm very well, thank you. I had a trip to Spain this weekend. Unfortunately, didn't see any Primera Federación football, but did see my beloved Yeclano Deportivo beat Recreativo de Huelva, which was remarkable under the circumstances. Recorded some audio from that game, also the FEDERF game I went to early on in the day. So we'll get that up on El Partido en Directo later in the week. And yeah, that was terrific and great to see some familiar faces again in Yecla. And a bit weary yesterday morning, but well worth it.
Yes, very jealous of that. And I imagine the weather, from what I saw, Liam, as well, was a damn sight better than it was when we were last there in Yecla. A bit more, less inclement, let's say that. Certainly better than what's going on with my roof at the moment, Liam. And I'm sure it's the same for you in Manchester. The northwest of England is being pounded by pouring down rain, and subsequently it's decided to rain indoors in here, just outside of Blackpool. But we persevere because we've got some fantastic football to talk about this week. First and foremost, just to get over some news, the managerial merry-go-round is well and truly on its way. I think the first one we need to speak about, to be fair, Liam, it's a bit more of an unusual case because this isn't a sacking. This is a bit of a unique situation in Spain because it's not often you get clubs that can poach managers from other clubs. I've had it described to me as a bit of a gentleman's agreement. However, Jesus Galvan of the Sevilla Atletico, he has been pinched by Segunda side Mirandés. Mirandés obviously getting rid of their manager, I think it was Fran Justo, recently. And basically they've been looking for a replacement and you've settled on the Sevilla Bay manager. Liam, what do you think about that?
It's such a strange one. This isn't it? The classic example of this, of course, is Xabi Alonso. I think you may have heard of him, Nick, who got relegated with Real Sociedad a few years ago. His only season, I think, in Segunda, and duly went on to become the Bayer Leverkusen and now the Real Madrid head coach. And Jesus Galvan, let's be honest, Sevilla Atletico are in the relegation zone at the moment. It's obviously very tight in their grupo as it is in both grupos, but it does seem quite remarkable, doesn't it, on a certain level that a guy who's sitting in charge of a team in a relegation zone gets a promotion to the division above. And that is the key in terms of, as you say, the gentleman's agreement. There is generally a gentleman's agreement in Spain that you can't take a job in the same division if you get sacked in the same season, and also you can't go down, so you couldn't lose your job in Primera Federación and then take a Segunda Federación job. Although, as far as I understand it, there's nothing to say that you can't. It's just that you're not really supposed to. It's not the done thing. There's nothing legal about it, but you are allowed to go up. And of course, Galvan is always going to take this opportunity to take charge of Mirandés, and duly was offered the job and duly accepted, of course. So yeah, interesting one, that, because on two levels. First of all, you've got a coach in the relegation zone getting a promotion, and then you've got the very fact that he is allowed to leave and join another club, which generally doesn't happen very much in Spain in the same season.
Yes, and he has subsequently been replaced internally, as we would expect with any filial, with Lucy Martin. He's took over and got a solid 1-1 result this weekend, which we'll shortly talk about. Elsewhere, Arentero are in the market for a new manager. I think the writing was on the wall for this one for quite a while. Jesus Arribas sacked by the club on Sunday evening, relieved of his duties. They're now in the market for another one. And we also have it on good information, Liam, that Carlos de Lerma at Marbella has been shown the door. I believe also the sporting director is on his way out there too. So wholesale changes in Marbella. We've just had Sergio Guillo sacked by Huesca. I know there's the gentleman's agreement, as you've mentioned, Liam. Do Marbella dare to pick up the phone and say, hey, do you fancy it?
I don't think that'll happen. No, I think it's really absolutely not the done thing. I don't think Guillo would take it anyway. He's presumably been paid off for the rest of his year at Huesca, and so he'll sit tight. But it is a strange situation, isn't it? These guys are sitting around. They often do lose their jobs quite early in the season when things haven't worked out, and generally have to wait 8-9 months to get another job, which must be quite frustrating at times. In fact, I've spoken to coaches who find it quite frustrating, who don't necessarily just want to take the money and sit and take it easy for 9 months. They actually want to get straight back in, and generally that isn't allowed. allowed to happen. Yeah, I mean, the situation with Arribas, I'm not clear about this, but my understanding of it is that he probably was only really going to get the job in the first place because his dad was going to take over Arenteiro. And this is the same Arribas who's now trying to buy Cartagena. So he felt to me like a sitting duck. I mean, because once his dad switched his attentions to Cartagena, then realistically, there wasn't really a reason to have given him the job in the first place. They signed like 25 players from Victus, didn't they? Arenteiro in the summertime. They got rid of everybody more or less apart from David Ferreira. And yeah, this is, as you say, as soon as things start to go badly. And of course, Arenteiro would always expect to struggle at this level because they're a really, really small club. But of course, because they have survived for a couple of seasons in Primera Federación, there is now an expectation that they will survive, and they aren't doing very well at the moment. So yeah, this is one of these ones where they've looked at it and gone, he's not fulfilling expectations. We didn't necessarily really want him in the first place. So off you go. And Dilemma, we've been rumouring that one for weeks, haven't we? Club haven't announced it yet, but we haven't got authorities to say that he's said goodbye to his players and that he's gone. And we would expect by the next time you hear from us for the replacement to be announced and taking charge of his first game this coming weekend. Copa del Rey draw. Second round draw. Highlights for you of that draw for Primera Federación teams, Nick.
Well, absolutely. The Copa del Rey draw, some beautiful games up and coming. The Giant Killers of Orense, they've got another La Liga side, this time in the form of Girona. Cartagena have a really cool tie against Valencia. Sabadell against Deportivo La Coruña. Ponferradina against Racing de Santander, and Talavera hosting Malaga, which I think is going to be an excellent game of football as well. Plenty of good representation there. And to be honest, Liam, I think there are a few results there where Primera F sides will best their higher league opponents.
Yeah, we've just picked a few, haven't we? And there are quite a few also on the ties as well. So we've just focused on the ones where it's on the sides. Obviously, I travel to Primera Federación. Yeah, I mean, Talavera Malaga is interesting. I wonder if our good friend Matt Harrison will go to that one. I remember he went to Baracaldo away, didn't he, before? Quite a lot nearer. It's the kind of game if my team were drawn away at Talavera, and I think he's round about the Puente in Spain, so I think he's probably going to be on holiday. So I think he might be well interested in getting to that one, and I certainly would if I were a Malaga fan. Be wanting to travel up there. Looks a great place to go and watch a game of football. Talavera. Yeah, Sabadell is an interesting one. Depor, long journey across. Again, this is supposed to be regionalised, but you're basically travelling from northwest Spain to the northeast coast. I mean, it really is a very long way, that one. So it remains to be seen what sort of team Depor send over there. Although Sabadell can't score at home, can they? So as long as they don't, as long as they score one Depor, they'll probably win that game. Ponfe really interesting against Racing. Yeah, a bit disappointed if I'm honest. Nothing against Cartagena. I would quite like to have seen, because we knew, didn't we, that two Primera F sides were going to get La Liga sides, and it would be nice for me, I think, if one of the sides a bit lower down, a bit more humble than Cartagena, who've obviously just been relegated from Segunda, had got the other La Liga. So we knew Orense would, because they only qualified for this Copa del Rey with what they did in the Copa Federación. So they were actually ranked lower than the Primera Federación team, so they were guaranteed to get a La Liga side. But I think of all the Primera Federación sides that I would have liked to have got the other La Liga opposition, probably Cartagena would have been quite low on the list. But yeah, good for them. Not terribly local, but it should be a decent game. And again, they've got a chance in that one, haven't they? Because Valencia are struggling in the league and will no doubt prioritise that when this cup tie comes around.
Absolutely. And speaking of Orense as well, in the Copa Federación, Oscar Caños makes his debut in the Zamora dugout tomorrow night against Orense. That game was postponed because of that Copa Federación final, which they went and duly won. That is Orense, if I'm right in saying, Liam.
Yeah, it's slightly bizarre, that, isn't it? Because I know it's just that they beat Orihuela. And talking of distances to travel, the final was played in Orense. So it's like, right, okay, this is a final of a cup competition. And by the way, Orihuela, not only are we not playing it anywhere near your home ground, we're playing it almost as far away. Orihuela is right down in the southeast, like near La Manga and south of Alicante. And by the way, you've got to go and play this final against a team that's from a league higher than you in their home ground, which is probably about, 1,000 kilometres away. It's almost as far in Spain as you can travel. So quite a bizarre one there, but they won't complain about that Orense, because they won the game and they obviously won the trophy, and then they, because of that, as I say, they get a La Liga side. And it'll be interesting to see what Cano does in this one. I mean, it's not ideal for him, is it, really, because it's a home game for Zamora against a team that's just played a big game at the weekend in the cup and won a cup, and presumably will have celebrated a bit after that, and have only won one game in the league all season, haven't won away from home. So, and we know that the knives are out already, but Cano arrives at Zamora under a little bit of a cloud because of what he's done in his previous jobs. So yeah, tough one. That's tomorrow night. So keep half an eye on that one. Obviously, if you're listening to this after Wednesday night, then it's already happened. But it should be interesting for both sides, that one, and from a Cano point of view, I'm sure he's really keen to get off to a good start.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure he will look to sort of like restore some glory to his name if he can at Zamora, and he's got the squad. Let's see if he can get it done out on the pitch. Just one final bit of novelty news, which I find quite interesting, Liam. Obviously, we know about the connection between Merida and Brentford. Obviously, they're in the same ownership group. Matthew Benham, Cliff Crown is the chairman of Merida now, etc., etc. There is going to be a friendly game between Merida and.
Tonight.
Oh, it's already been played.
It's
been played right now.
Okay. I think it caught me out somewhat. I haven't actually been able, unless you can surreptitiously check the score, which I'm sure you can, Nick. You're quite good at this. I'm not used to having to deal with YouTube as well, so I'm not so good at subtly looking to see what the score was. But yeah, they played it already, which I thought was really interesting because it's a Tuesday night game. I'm really puzzled by this one and quite intrigued as well, because I look at it and I think, well, maybe they're looking at to see whether the Brentford B players are good enough to play at that level. Maybe also it's being used as a kind of a little bit of an educational experience. Maybe they're taking some Brentford lads out there to see what they make of being in Merida, with a view to perhaps loaning them to Merida. So it's a really interesting one. I can't believe I believe there's more to it, is what I'm saying, than meets the eye. I don't think it's just like two clubs getting together for a nice little kickabout. I think there's got to be an ulterior motive there. I think it's a great idea. And I saw that Cliff Crown was sporting his celebratory it's a centenary. It's a funny kind of centenary. It's not centenary. Centenary's 100 years, isn't it? But he was wearing that red Merida shirt, which I think they've released to commemorative, not centenary, 30 years since they got promoted to La Liga, I think it is. So that's very smart on him, and he looked very happy wearing it. And so all good and a nice idea. But I can't help thinking that there's probably a little bit more to it than just a Tuesday night kickabout between the clubs owned by the same ownership group.
Yes, and if you are interested in knowing the score, Liam, it finished a humble 1-1. Which is what you won. But I think it's quite cool that, the Brentford Academy, like you say, they are looking to create those links. I think we expected maybe a bit more throughput from the Brentford Academy this summer, with that link. It didn't quite materialise, and this is potentially a future avenue to go down. I know he doesn't play there anymore, but I know Romeo Beckham was in the Brentford Academy at one point. That would have been a fun link up. So yeah, interesting. 1-1 was the score there. Should we talk about some football games that happened at the weekend that maybe do mean something, Liam?
Yeah, go ahead. Hit us with some Grupo Uno games, please, Nick.
Perfect. Yeah. So the first of the three games I recommended for you to watch was a draw. It was between Unionistas and Pontevedra. It finished 1-1. A brilliant opening goal, Liam, from Thiago Rodriguez after 13 minutes. He sort of like danced his way through. He picks the ball up around 25 yards, jinxes his way through past three defenders and just slots it, near post, bottom corner. Keeper's getting nowhere near it. A really, really tidy start to the game from Pontevedra, who've been in such fantastic form. And then basically for the rest of the match, the sides just basically traded long distance shots. There wasn't really too much happening until the 88th minute when Unionistas, in the dark as well, may I add. I want to put this out there. If you are the groundsman or the person behind the lights at Unionistas, just notch up the lumens ever so slightly, because I could barely see this going in, so I can see why the keeper struggled. But Jota Lopez would score then in the most ridiculous of circumstances. It's clearly a cross, which is looking for somebody at the back post. It doesn't find anybody, but it just sneaks its way in, comes off the far post, and the Pontevedra goalkeeper is beaten. And to be honest, on the face of it, probably a deserved equaliser, Liam, but still a bad goal for Pontevedra to concede at that time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those ones, isn't it, where I actually saw one this weekend in the La Deportivo game against Recreativo de Huelva, is the keeper did really well to save. It's a ball in, as you say, to that danger area where the keeper can't commit, can he? Because somebody might get touched on it and he's going to be completely wrong-footed. The problem is that if he doesn't commit a little bit earlier than the keeper did here, then he can just go straight in, and this is exactly what happened here. So yeah, it's we've seen it happen before, and it'll certainly happen again. It's annoying from a Pontevedra point of view, of course. And I imagine James, who travelled across from Pontevedra for this one, it's not an incredibly long journey, but it's far enough. He would have been gutted. Our Pontevedra Terrier, who gets the most Pontevedra games, he'd have been really disappointed to concede a goal that late. As you say, they've been such a good run, and those extra 2 points would have come in really handy. But I think I agree with you overall. Probably a draw was about right. I think Pontevedra were fairly solid, but didn't do an awful lot going forward after that goal. And Unionists on the balance of play probably deserved the point. But yeah, an interesting way for the game to finish, and irritating, as you say, from the visitors' point of view.
Yeah, I think it's also got to really, give a pat on the back to the resolve that Mario Simon is installed at United as well, because, a goal like that after 13 minutes, hark back a few weeks ago under Oriol, that would have been the floodgates, or at least there would have been no way back for them. So I think, a massive, recognition from how well Unionistas are playing. Yes, they're drawing a lot of games, but still it's a damn sight better from where they were. The next game, Liam, a huge result for Dani Vidal's Real Aviles Industrial away from home in Cacereno, 4-0 away from home. This is a statement result, isn't it?
It certainly is, and we know that Cacereno struggle to score goals both home and away, but they don't concede 4 goals. They're pretty solid. I mean, they've only won a couple, but they've drawn quite a few. And yeah, this was an absolute stuffing, wasn't it? I think the first goal was a little bit controversial, Bautista's goal. I think it did look like there was a foul in the build-up. And yeah, I think overall, after that, they just pushed on and won comfortably, didn't they, as you say?
It seemed to be wave after wave, and I think it's just that little interference of play from Raul, which I suppose you can attribute to being a bit like, dog magic or shithousery for what it is. He's just sort of like leant on his defender and nudged him out of the way for Bautista to go through and score, a really nice tidy goal 1-on-1. The second goal scored by Raul was also a really, really nice header as well. And the perfect time to score it as well, just before the second half. Calamity for the third goal, Isiros with a beautiful lofted goal, just lobbing the goalkeeper who was marooned outside his box was Ivan. And then Barry would wrap it up with a huge win with a nice sort of like 88th minute slice past the goalkeeper, 4-0. It only puts Real Aviles Industrial 2 points off Tenerife, which if you had said to me at the start of the season, Liam, I would have gone, you're mad. Put down your hooch and back away from the drink and seek help. This is crazy, isn't it?
It's mental, yeah. I mean, it's quite remarkable what they've managed to achieve so far. And they score goals for fun, don't they? I mean, it's not the first time they scored 4 goals away from home. They did so at Guadalajara as well. They really are very free scoring, great to watch. And I'm absolutely sure, I can't remember off the top of my head where we predicted each of the 40 sides to finish, but I'm absolutely sure that Real Aviles Industrial weren't a side that we expected to be anywhere near the top 5. We thought they would struggle. Obviously, one of the big reasons for that was the very late change of coach in the summer. But yeah, they're absolutely confounding all those people who thought they were going to struggle, and we weren't the only ones. I'm quite sure of that. Conversely, Cacereno clearly in a bit of trouble now, and as I said before, the main issue is not scoring goals. But when you start to concede 4 as well, then you really are in a bad place, aren't you? Which is a great shame. So let's hope they can turn that around and begin to move back up the table after this afternoon to forget, shall we say?
Yes, agreed on that. It could serve as a bit of a solid reset and reality check maybe for Cacereno and their fans. Up to the Basque Country for my third game in Grupo Uno, it was Baracaldo 0, Ponferradina 0. Both sides basically just remained on the periphery of the playoff pictures after this 0-0 draw at the Estadio La Sade. Really not a lot to report from this one. I don't know how they managed to eke out 3 minutes worth of highlights for this one, but I suppose on the positive, both are now unbeaten in 5 games. Like you say, both of them on the outskirts of the playoffs. I think either side will be happy with how their seasons are going right now.
Yeah, I think so. I think Ponferradina quite understandably came for the draw in this one. I think that, the way Baracaldo have been playing recently, let's not forget that they absolutely blew Tenerife away on their own patch a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, and Baracaldo just couldn't find a way to break them down. I think 0-0 was, as you say, a fair result, and it was not a classic, which is a shame because on paper, I think you said, didn't you, last week, that you'd seen a couple of decent games between these two sides last season. This certainly did not follow in the footsteps of those games in terms of excitement. But yeah, we'll move on to Grupo Dos, and the three games that I chose in Grupo Dos, and the first one I had was Hércules against Europa. I think now this really interests me, Nick, because I think Ruben Torrecillas' boys have now won 3 on the spin at home. And yet there's still an awful lot of discontent in terms of the fans down in Alicante about whether he's the right man for the job. We talked before about how the recruitment's been pretty decent over the summer. There's been some money spent, and yet they don't look convincing. This wasn't a great performance. Winero Pero scored late on to win it for them. And they've only lost 1 in 5, but yet still there's this real feeling of I saw one guy who'd made a video about this, sort of saying, this is more about just surviving than thriving, and that is generally seems to be quite a downbeat mood down there, doesn't there, around this team? Well, not around the team so much, but around the coach.
Yeah, and I think that's it. And it can often be careful what you wish for type scenario. We've looked at managers who have, or clubs who have changed the manager for someone, a bit more exciting, who might play a bit more ambitious football, and you can see where they end up. Sometimes often towards the bottom of the table if it doesn't work out first and foremost. So I think you've got to admire, what Ruben Torrecilla is doing in terms of he's just grinding out the results he needs to get. But ultimately, you're absolutely right. Money was spent here. A squad has been assembled, which, we and many others assumed would be fighting towards the top end of the table in Grupo Dos. A league that had maybe only 1 or 2 clear sort of like potential title challengers. So I think, when you're a club of this side, it must be underwhelming to see some of the football on display and where they are in the league. And, it's one thing to win at home. It's another thing to not win away. I think they're probably just a bit placated by it. I think they want to see their club challenging. It's been so long that, maybe that itch just needs to be scratched now. And they maybe do need to get someone who can play a bit more expansive, more exciting football. But it comes with a risk of no guaranteed success, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the issue here as well, Nick, is that they've come up from Segunda Ref a couple of seasons ago, haven't they? And I think they're delighted just to be back at Primera Ref initially. But once you're there and you've established yourselves as back in Primera Ref, you want to push on, don't you? You want to really be looking to head for Segunda. This is a club that's set up to be a Segunda side at the very least. You could argue that even though the ground is a little bit tired nowadays, it's a big ground. You could certainly hold, host a Liga football if they were to go on a charge. So yeah, they're looking now to push on, and they're not sure that Torrecilla is the man to do that. In this game, I suppose, as you say, they got it done, but partly I think part of the problem here for the visitors is that they're not very good on the road, are they? Europa have lost 3 of their last 4. So I suppose in a way to win this game, yeah, it's a good result, but it's against a team that aren't doing so well on their travels recently. They're only still in 4th place in Grupo Dos because of their excellent home form. And of course, that's going to change, or not necessarily going to change, but it's going to be put under more pressure in a couple of months because they're going to have to leave their home. So yeah, Europa, I think, will certainly look to get as many points on the board as possible. But if they want to even really consolidate in this league, I think they have to try and do better on the road. And this was a game where they didn't offer an awful lot. And that's probably part of the reason why the Hércules fans are frustrated, because they feel like the opposition wasn't all that, and they still rely on a goal in the last 15 minutes to win it.
Beto company just sort of like waiting at home for the phone to ring at the moment, potentially. But to be honest, we see some of the other managers that are moving out of the positions now, and you've got to think, well, actually, that list of available managers is becoming very, very finite. And I don't know if he's holding out for a Segunda job, or whether he's waiting for Hércules, or, dare I say, do Marbella give him a phone call? Who knows? But it'll be interesting to see what happens as managers start to pour away, whether Torrecilla can just hang on in there. Into your next game, Liam. This is a game between the caretaker of a club against the new manager of a club. Talk us through this absolute barnstormer of a game between Real Murcia and Gimnàstic de Tarragona.
Yeah, it was the caretaker coach, wasn't it? Colunga, who beat the new coach, Parallo, who'd got the job last week. A penalty early on for the visitors, so they went ahead. Jamajari, that's 6 for the season for him, which is a really decent return. He's not a striker, is he? So that's a decent effort from him, even if he's the penalty taker. And then Pedro Anita and Flacos just turned this game on its head in a couple of minutes, didn't they, in the first half. Benito scored the first when he set up Flacos for the second one. We mentioned on X that, you know, surprisingly, if you play the right kind of ball in behind the defence for Flacos, he's actually quite deadly, and he stuck this one away really calmly. But the real showstopper was saved for the second half, wasn't it, Nick?
Oh, it's a motherfucking Chilena, Liam. Honestly, it was absolutely beautiful from Alvaro Bustos, who, to be fair to him, I think he'll admit first time more than anyone that maybe this move to Real Murcia hasn't quite worked out in his favour so far, but he seemingly is starting to work his plane. He's had an excellent goal scored here. He just the way it dropped for him and the acrobatics, it was just stunning, Liam. And what a way to win a game. Like you say, that's how you do it, isn't it?
Amazing. The power is what gets me, isn't it? And it's a high ball as well. The ball loops up. Is it a header or something? It goes way up in the air. And he just launches himself into the air and absolutely smashes it. I mean, he's probably only about 12, 15 yards out. But just talk about flew past the keeper. I don't think he would have even seen it. That technique is never ever gonna grow old. I'm never gonna grow tired of watching that sort of ability. It's tremendous. And of course, yeah, he was very good at the tail end of last season at Ponferradina and looked like a really good signing for Real Murcia. Hasn't yet worked out. Maybe that will be the kickstart to his Murcia career. And then, of course, Morgano scored a great header for Gimnàstic de Tarragona straight afterwards to make it 3-2. And you would think with more than half an hour to play, Gimnàstic still well in with a chance of at least a point from this one, but they couldn't find an equaliser. And, of course, that's 2 wins out of 2 for Colunga in the league. And he also went through on penalties in the cup. I noticed that they're playing Cádiz in the cup, poor old Cádiz, who have been all the way across to UCAM Murcia and beaten them. the next game they get in the cup is against Real Murcia, so they've got to get back on the coach and do another 6 hours all the way across Andalusia to get to Murcia. So yeah, it's an interesting one. But yeah, Colunga, does he get the job full time? How many games does he need to win before they decide he is the one to go take them forward? Who knows? Only probably the people in the know at Real Murcia have made that decision, and we don't know it yet. So we'll see.
I'd give it to him. I like you say, you know, there's obviously 2 schools of thoughts for Real Murcia at the moment. Obviously, how much it's cost for them to get rid of the previous administration and the management team, etc. So there's not a lot of money there to flirt around. They're obviously still paying Fran Fernandez as well, his gardening leave. So why not give it to Colunga? For me, he's proven himself better than his opposite number this weekend. There's a few other managers that have come in and haven't hit the ground running as quickly as he has. And, this is a great level to, cut your teeth, as a first team manager. So why not let him continue and crack on? Into your third game, Liam. This was the one that cost Carlos Dilemma, or may cost Carlos Dilemma, time of speaking, his job. We say end of the road here, allegedly. Talk us through this one, because this again was a bit of a crazy game down in Andalusia.
It was, although the second half was a little bit of a non-event until the very end, I thought. It's a bizarre goal that puts Alcorcón in front in this one. I think Rafa Llorente breaks down the right side, he's through on goal, then he sort of trips and almost falls over, just about regains his balance. Has a very weak shot, which I would think the keeper would save all day. But there happens, to his immense good fortune, it happens to, I think, Van Huysden right next to the keeper. It sort of hits Van Huysden, loops up in the air, and then sort of falls gently into the net. It really is, it's almost in slow motion, that ball. It makes it over the line. I'm sure he'll be claiming it, but it really is an own goal for me. I suppose you'd say it was a shot on target, but I'm not sure. If the keeper hadn't even been there, I'm not sure the shot would have even made it over the line. It was that weak. But yeah, that was one of those pieces of really bad luck for the home side. Luis Alcalde equalised then right at the end of the first half, and you're thinking they're at home, they've come back to 1-1 just for half time. This is where they push on and win the game, and they didn't. They were really poor second half. I thought Marbella, Alcorcón had a couple of half chances, and then Vladis scored the winner in added time, and that's his first of the season. So yeah, a big win for Pablo Alvarez, the Alcorcon coach, who's also under quite a lot of pressure at the moment after a string of bad results. Obviously, this game was the final nail in the coffin for me for Dilemma. It's not the game that's cost him his job. They've been a really poor run. They had high expectations at the start of the season. They've spent money, and he really hasn't worked out, has he, the last 7 or 8 games at all. And yeah, I think it's absolutely the right call to move him on and get somebody new. And the big question, obviously, at the time of recording is who's that going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting whether they go for, like you say, an established name. They've spent a lot of money on the squad. Expectations high. Do they do the same with the manager, or can they afford to do that? I'm sure they can, but I think we all, again, looking back in reflection, had Marbella finishing in this league a lot higher, challenging for those playoff positions after just surviving last season. They won't want to see themselves back in that position again. They finished the weekend in the relegation zone, Liam. They're going to go and get somebody who can get them out of this, I imagine. Do they go and get a Fran Fernandez, for example? Proven set of hands. We don't know, but we'll keep you up to date as soon as we hear. Let's just go and have a little look at some other results from the weekend, Liam. Sabadell 0, Tarazona 0. The home side still only scoring 1 goal there at home all season. Quite a strange set of circumstances there, Liam, considering where Sabadell are in the league and still the only undefeated side in Primera Federación. Are we surprised that this finished 0-0 though, considering the teams involved?
Not at all, sadly. I mean, I can't work it out with Sabadell. I get the principle that they are better when there's more space away from home. They can hit teams with the counter-attack. They pass the ball very well. Teams sit in a low block when they go to Sabadell, and they find it really hard to break down. As you can see, 5 0-0s and a 1-0 is extraordinary, really, isn't it? For a first 6 games of the season, for a team that's unbeaten as well. They've scored far more goals than that on the road, and I think Tarazona have only scored 3 goals in 6 games on the road, and we know that they're very strong defensively. They haven't conceded at home, have they, in the league? And of course, neither have Sabadell at this stage. So yeah, this was kind of a nailed on under 2.5 goals, wasn't it? It didn't come as any shock to me that any 0-0. No. And that's, it's going to cost Sabadell, isn't it? This, because eventually all those draws, they will start to lose a few, and from a really promising start to the season, I suspect they might end up mid-table, which is a great shame, but they need to find a way to break tight sides down at home. At the moment, they're not managing to do that. Athletic B, Athletic B 1, Eldense 1. I don't know what you think. I think it's a decent result for the caretaker coach, Claudio Barragan, isn't it?
I would take this against the strengths of Athletic B. We spoke last weekend about how we don't like to talk about filials, but we are going to have to start addressing Athletic B because they are the league leaders and they do have a very, very strong side. But for me, this is a great result for Eldense on the road. Another good point for Claudio Barragan. Another goal for Dione. He seems to have found his shooting boots. That takes him up to 42 goals now in Primera RFEF. He's not willing to give up his crown just yet. And then for the home side as well, Fernando Torres' side still 2 points clear at the top, but only because all those teams below him didn't get the results they needed to topple them. So, it's wide open at the top of Grupo Dos. Not the result we wanted to read potentially this weekend, Liam, given our admiration of Teruel at home. Teruel 1, Cartagena 2. Talk us through it.
Yeah, it's interesting this, isn't it? Because they went ahead again, Teruel, and the last 3 times they've done that, they've won 1-0. They've been very good at shutting down opposition when they get ahead. But Cartagena managed to buck that trend. They equalised before the break. Diego Gomez, who's on loan from Depor, I think. I think it's his first goal of the season for Cartagena, so great for that. Again, we've got probably more than halfway through the show without talking about FVS in any great detail. I feel I have to mention this because it underlines to me the problems with it. So you've got a situation where Teruel appealed for a penalty, and then there are 2 separate incidents before that penalty appeal. One is a potential foul, I think, in the build-up, and the other one is a potential foul on the keeper. And I get that they're going to have to clear those 2 decisions first before they can even make a decision on the penalty. But they look at the replay, Nick, so many times. He looks at the first foul 4, 5, 6 times, and he's got to look at the next foul 4, 5, 6 times as well. And then he's got to look at the penalty. There's got to be a limit here. He's got to give it a couple of looks and go, no, don't think that's it. I understand he wants to be absolutely sure, but if he isn't absolutely sure, then why are they even checking it in the first place? If he's not sure it's a foul, then he carries on with the review. It just seems really strange to me. And then to get to the end of the 3 decisions that he has to make, and for it to be no penalty at the end of all that, having spent ages checking the first 2 fouls, which obviously he decided weren't fouls. Otherwise, why did he bother to look at the 3rd incident? I just can't work it out at all. I feel there's some really obvious amendments they can make there to do that. And the easiest one for me to do is to say he can only look at it twice. He can only have 2 minutes to review the decision. And you know what? If he's on the clock, he's on the clock. Make a bloody decision. Don't look at a fairly innocuous situation 4 or 5 times. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, there's been thorough, and then there's been, wanted to basically do his job for him, I suppose, is a way to describe it as well. But yes, it was obviously a good result for Cartagena, Liam. Obviously, we've spoken about them sort of challenging at the right end of the table now. There's obviously a lot of off-field issues which are, fortunately not leaking onto pitch results. I know Cartagena have been sort of like drawing a lot of games recently, but this is a big win away from home. And we'll see how they get on next weekend. And obviously still got Copa del Rey football to look forward to. This next game, Liam, this is not good, is it? Because we had Celta Fortuna 4, Talavera 3. Newly promoted side was 3-0 up at home at halftime against Sevilla. We're thinking, great result. This is what we want to see. Second half, a nightmare for the home side, conceding 4 goals.
I hope so. Had a great second half.
Away side, sorry. 4 goals in the second half there. 2 absolute howlers in this one. Luis Bilbao with a comical own goal for the Celta Fortuna side. And then the bigger disasters came in the second half. Talavera keeper Jaime Gonzalez parried a shot going wide. Bernard Suma, who I think you've noted down here, he's on loan from the Ghanaian Premier League. Didn't know they had one, but okay. Pounced on the rebound, score the winner. This is a chaotic result, isn't it? We shouldn't be surprised. We know Celta Fortuna are good, but to be 3-0 down, it's quite the turnaround.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it wasn't that lad at Lugo last season, Jeffrey Free. Wasn't he also initially from Ghana as well? I think he came from the Ghanaian Premier League and then went off to
somewhere.
Was it the Middle East and then was loaned out to Lugo. Hasn't been seen since. Sadly, he was quite a player, wasn't he? Yeah, there's obviously a link there. There's obviously some connections with Primera RFEF sides. It would seem that obviously felt the football, and the hope would be that Samoa would go on, I suppose, to make his name for the first team. It just seems a weird thing to be on loan from the Ghanaian Premier League. I thought they would just signed him. They haven't, obviously, trying him out to see what he's like. He's only 19, and I think he came off the bench in about the 87th minute here, and couldn't believe his luck, because, as you say, Gonzalo, I don't know what he's doing there. He just gets his angles all wrong, decides to save a ball that would have gone out for a goal kick, and that's it, 4-3. Really hard luck on Talavera, who played really well in the first half, even though they got a massive bit of help from Luis Bilbao. It's a really dreadful own goal. But yeah, I suppose all they can say from it is that Celta Fortuna are right up there, and they absolutely dominate the first half, Talavera. And so just to try and take some positive from it, they compete with one of the best sides in the division right now. Another side that's doing really well from that part of the world, and we expected them to beat a side that decided to get rid of their coach afterwards, didn't they?
Yes, it was Arentero 0, Racing Club de Ferrol 2, as you say here, Liam, a routine victory for the away side, basically just doing what they need to do. It has spelt the end for Jesus Arribas, but obviously we saw this incoming, but it's still no wins in 7. We've not seen many goals for Mingo very, very much recently either. So it appears to me that Arentero need to do something if they have any hope of staying in this league come the end of the season. Going down to Andalusia, it was an all Andalusian affair. It was Algeciras 1, Antequera 0. Juan Garcia scoring the winner, and just about made it over the line, didn't it?
Yeah, Juan Garcia, I've seen quite a lot of him in Segunda with, I think, both Burgos and Albacete. I quite like him, actually. His goal scoring record isn't particularly wonderful, but I think there's been some suggestions this week that one of the top strikers at Algeciras hasn't been paid for quite a while. I suspect this will be Garcia. I don't like to speculate, but he's the kind of player, if they're going to bring him in, because he's played in Segunda for the last couple of seasons, should they have to give him a reasonable wage. But yeah, he scored here, so I suppose he's even more keen to get paid if he is the one that isn't being paid. But it wasn't one of his greatest ever goals, I suspect. They won the game 1-0 for the second time, though. Algeciras to 2 1-0 wins in the last 2 home games. Ivan Torrillo at the centre of attention again. He went down. I mean, he looked like he had been headbutted to me. We know that Spanish footballers don't mind to hit the ground quite easily anyway. But I thought there was some contact here. Referee disagreed. I checked it. Torrillo's social media. He didn't appear to want to comment on it. It was a really bad-tempered sort of, I don't know, fractious affair. I felt lots of FES appeals, lots of people falling over the ground, lots of claims for red cards, yellow cards, penalties, etc. All ignored by the man in the middle. So we ended up with just a 1-0. And Antequera, I think they went for a red card at one point, which was denied. So yeah, I think we ended the game with 11 aside, and Antequera lose their unbeaten record. They've actually been on a really decent run in terms of not losing 7 games before this one, but they've drawn 5 of them, so they slip into the bottom 5, as we know, in such a tight division. Drawing 5 games, you have other teams that win 2 and lose 6. You know, they're actually better off than you are. So yeah, Antequera now with some work to do again.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of a team that have got work to do, we thought they had it all wrapped up after 6 games. Tenerife 0, Bilbao Athletic 1. Lots of talk here about the disallowed goal for Tenerife in this when it was 0-0, but it is a foul on the goalkeeper, Liam, is it? Gallego knows exactly what he's doing here, doesn't he?
I think so. I think he lets it. Did you see him take a little look over his shoulder? He knows who the keeper is. It's really interesting. It's really split opinion. I saw a few polls on this, and a few of the people. What do you think? Is it a foul on the keeper? Is it on? No, I think keepers are massively overprotected on the whole. I really do. And I'm not saying it's huge contact, but that look over his shoulder is kind of a bit incriminating for me.
It's cheeky, isn't it? It's like
he's a 38, 39-year-old striker. He's just trying to block the keeper from getting to it. I think there's contact. It's a foul for me. I know that Tenerife are very unhappy about it and feel it should have stood. And even more so because it was at 0-0. If they'd scored there, I think probably they do go on to win the game. But then they don't get the goal. And obviously, Bilbao Athletic have been a terrible run. I think they hadn't won in the last 6 going to this one. Go and get a goal, and then they hang on to win. And that's twice now in a row. The Tenerife failed to score at home, and I think the last one was against Unionistas, who were struggling badly at the time. So yeah, worrying times for them at the moment. And there's even been talk that Favela might be moved on, which I find incredible. But yeah, there's something about the way they are at the moment that isn't quite working. And they've got a big game this weekend, haven't they? So we'll see how that one works out.
Yeah, the one that gets me on this is the goals have dried up for Jesus Di Miguel. I was looking at the top goal scorers list, of across both leagues just to see, him who was in and there around. And at one point he was the absolute standout, way ahead of everybody else. But it's really sort of like dried up for him at the minute, and kind of says it all for the way that Tenerife are doing at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see how they do respond to that absolute shock defeat. A Filial side who didn't win this weekend, Lee, fortunately enough, it was Osasuna Promesas. They lost 1-0 away to Arenas Teguecho. We've spoken, to the man himself about how Arenas Club have to make their home stadium an absolute fortress, how they have to get points on the board before they move in January. And this is an important win for them because results haven't been going their way recently, have they?
No, not at all. Nice to see a couple of youngsters. Always like to see youngsters coming through. Baba, we've talked about before. He's still only 20 years old. I mean, maybe he'll go back to Tenerife in January. I'm not sure if they've got a recall clause on him. Lovely little assist here to set up. I think it was Anders Watatu scored this one. He's only 19. I think he's got a couple of goals now, and he's defenders. That's great. And Arenas Teguecho played with 10 for the last 12 minutes. He still hung on to win. It's their 4th win in 6 at home, which is just as well because they've lost all 5 away from home. So, as you say, they're very dependent on the home form, and that is a worry given that they're going to move to Fedora in January, whether they can keep the home form going. They certainly need to look at improving their away form and not be so dependent on the home form. Osasuna Promesas, as we've said many times before, struggled badly last year. We expect them to struggle this year. They're not 1 in 7, but they're only 1 point away from safety, which just tells you all you need to know about how tight these leagues are. They've not been in a great place, but they're still pretty close to safety right now.
Yes, absolutely. And the way it can be in fear that way. One team that was down there, but it certainly seemed to put their past behind them, Liam. I'm sure Fran Beltran can sleep a lot easier recently. Merida 3, Real Madrid Castilla 0. An absolutely brilliant result from the home side here. 2 goals from Luis Pareja. This is a fantastic result for Merida, a statement result of that. And we have to put, a little nod to their pre-match photo. I know you've always praised Merida for their social medias. Just quickly explain to listeners, if you've not seen it, what was the jab?
It's absolute genius. It's absolutely. I'm afraid I'm going to spend the next few minutes. If you're a Real Madrid fan, I'd now fast forward the next 4 or 5 minutes because, with your permission, Nick, and I'm sure you'll be happy to join in, I'm going to spend the next 3 or 4 minutes just completely hammering Real Madrid as a club, because this is the first thing in the build of this game that club did wrongly. Just a perfectly legitimate post, which essentially they took a quote from Nietzsche, which was essentially saying, "Don't be a sheep," wasn't it? Basically, and they had this big black sheep basically towering above all these white sheep, and all just the kind of the offence that this caused poor old little Real Madrid was just ridiculous. What they're basically saying is that this is a common problem in Spain, that too many people don't support their local team, that they're only interested in the big two. And I can relate to that completely. I don't like to see that at all. And I'm never going to be the kind of person who supports the big team rather than the small team. And it was not necessarily just a dig at Real Madrid, but of course all the, they all went up in fake, outrage about this, and it did get a lot of attention, and fair play to them, because as you say, I think the Merida media team is superb. They nail it again and again and again, and this is not all about Real Madrid. This is about, it's a bit more of a dig. It'd be more normal for the people of Extremadura to take it offensively, because they're basically having a go at them, aren't they, really? And the fact that Real Madrid playing white, blah blah blah. But yeah, it was a brilliant thing from my perspective. But I suppose if you're a Real Madrid fan, you take offence at pretty much everything, and we're going to talk a bit more about that in a minute, aren't we?
Yes, it's very us against them mentality. And like I say, Real Madrid Castilla have been in very good form recently. So this, as a result of 3-0, is absolutely fantastic for the home side, which only a few weeks ago, were struggling to climb out of the relegation zone. 2 goals, as we've mentioned, for Luis Pereira. That's a great bit of business for him, because he's not usually the starting centre-back either, but he's certainly staked a claim there. Another comical own goal, and this time from Victor Valdepenas. But I think when we look back at this game, it won't be the goals that we remember. It'll be the petulance of the Real Madrid players. And I put something out on social media about this. You can see when it's going wrong for a filial, why they resort to lashing out, because they seem to have like a thought process which we're entitled to rock up to Merida and post a result here and play our football because we are Real Madrid's backup stars, so to speak. This is some horrible challenges being thrown in here, aren't there? There was one beforehand which looked a bit ropey, but this second one for David Jimenez, it's just A, it's stupid, B, it's dangerous, and 3, it's pathetic.
Absolutely. Spoiled children, Nick. Spoiled children at the club. I mean, we don't like filials. We've made it clear. Real Madrid Castilla this season, and of course, they're only governed by what the boys at the top of that particular pyramid say they have to be. Just really, really dislikable. Various instances of how this club is disliked by everybody who isn't a Real Madrid fan, and they really do themselves no favours. First of all, we had the game being called off, didn't we, against Racing Club? They fell like 5 minutes' notice because they had too many internationals. Come on, one of the biggest clubs in the world, they can't field a team. That's absolute nonsense. And then we had this revelation from a fan who'd gone to one of the games at Valdebebas, where the Real Madrid Castilla play their home games, where kids like of 12, 18 months were being charged €19 to get in. Everyone pays €19, no discounts. And when questioned as to why this was the case, the answer was, this is Real Madrid. Just the arrogance and just everything about it is just really distasteful. And this is the worst of all for me, Nick, because ultimately it's a dreadful challenge. It's a career-ending challenge. And at the end of this, what they needed to do as a club was go, you know what? Actually, yeah, he made a mistake. He was disappointed. They'd lost the game 3-0. It's a really poor challenge. Did Arbeloa did that? No, he did not. It was all about, yeah, we've been hard done by all season. We don't get free kicks, absolutely throwing toys out of the pram like a bunch of spoiled children. And even then, of course, then the press wing of this club grinds into action, and Real Madrid Castilla have had so many fouls committed against them, it's not fair, and blah blah blah. Just shut up. Nobody's interested in your whining baby talk. Get over it. You lost the game. You were second best. Have a little bit of humility. Be classy, because right now you were looking very, very unclassy as a club. And the unfortunate thing about this, you could not care less, because you are who you are. Ran over.
No, I absolutely 100% agree on everything you've just said there. It is just, it's like it's a God-given right, isn't it, for them to be, as if Primera Federación is beneath them. However, of course, you've not been in Segunda for a very long time, and you're here on merit, so get used to it. Another filial at the weekend, Liam, Sevilla Atletico 1, Juventud de Torremolinos 1. The post-Galvani era begins in Seville with a point. Interestingly, you've put here as well, 2 years into the role began when he took over from the current Depor coach, Antonio Hidalgo. That should be a pretty good omen for him as well. He saw his side go 1-0 down, miss a pen, but eventually earn themselves a point. But it was not enough to take themselves out of the relegation zone. So again, not that we want to watch Sevilla Atletico with too much earnest, but Torremolinos, again, it's a good result for them.
Great result. We had another point on the road. Brilliant stuff from them. Ibiza 0, Betis Deportivo 0, another filial in Seville struggling. And of course, Ibiza, Miguel Alvarez, I think that's 4 games, isn't it, including the cup game now. He hasn't won yet. Both sides underperforming massively at the moment. Guadalajara 1, Lugo 1. Nick, a bit of a rot-stopping result from the home side after losing a couple in a row in the league. But they're now 7 without win in Primera Federación, aren't they? Which is worrying. They're still missing Salifa. What about Lugo? They're not really doing what they need to do on the road, are they?
No, that's exactly it. We spoke last week about Lugo's form at the Ancho Caro and, the way they can be formidable there. But away from home, they just seem to be a bit of a bit of an odd one because they just can't seem to get the results. And I think, like you say here, they would go away to Guadalajara, who aren't in great form. No wins in 7. And they should have maybe got the result here with the squad that they've got. But again, just something just doesn't seem right there for me. They should be way and above where they are in the league at the moment. But, we'll see. We'll see where they end up in the next few weeks. The final game of the weekend, Liam, is Villarreal B 2, Atletico Thañaqueño 0. That is 5 defeats on the bounce now for the away side. Really not a great run. It's not looking great, but we've not really spoken about Thañaqueño pulling the trigger on their manager a lot recently. So it's be interesting to see how we might see whether Jose Herrera is out of a job anytime soon.
Yeah, I think obviously Juan Cala pulls the strings there, the guy that's also very instrumental down the road at Cadiz. I don't think he's going to be happy about this. Remember, Herrera came in late last season, did keep them up. They started the season well. I still can't get over the fact that the start of that bad run was after that fantastic performance against Cacereno when they absolutely blew him away in the first half of that game. And since then, they've just been absolutely abject. Sad to see an ex-Licano Deportivo midfielder, Sato, getting sent off in this one. I think it was a second yellow, and it was duly a penalty that he conceded in doing so. And Al Hassan scored it. That was 2-0. Alex Rubio had already scored in the first 5 minutes. Again, another goal for Alex Rubio. I'm sure you're always happy to see him score for the filial, Nick. And that was it, wasn't it? Game over. More than half an hour gone. No way back for Atletico Thañaqueño. And yeah, I think that Herrera must be looking nervously over his shoulder at this point because 5 defeats in a row, I should say, is not good for job security, is it?
It's not, especially down in Sanlúcar. I think, was it 4 managers last season that they had? So it'd be interesting to see how long he can last when that is kind of the done thing down there. So yes, obviously no Orense Zamora fixture, as we've already mentioned, that's being played tomorrow night in the catch-up game. So we'll make sure to keep you up to date with that fixture and that result as it happens. Liam, your turn to pick the games in Grupo Uno this weekend.
Yeah, I started with a Friday night game, which I think we very rarely do, actually. I think we did Banacalda Tenerife a couple of weekends ago when I was going to it and I was choosing. I think you chose it, actually. But yeah, that was a Friday night game, wasn't it? This is Real Aviles Industrial against Arenas de Quecho. In theory, it's a home banker, isn't it? Real Aviles Industrial flying Arenas de Quecho, as we said earlier on the show, and haven't got a point away from home yet. Friday 9:15. Let's see if they can buck that trend and get a decent result up in Asturias. Big game on Saturday evening in Ponferrada. Ponferradina Lugo. This is a game between two sides who aren't right next to each other. And of course, we know that Ponferrada isn't even in Galicia, so it's not a Galicia. In case you were about to say that, Nick.
Yep. Go back to listen to last season if you want to get that joke. If you're new to this here, we said that last season by accident, didn't we?
We did
I
indeed.
said that
Great
last
game
season
to
about
Derby.
accident.
They looked at our map and realised the pond for that. Many apologies to Chris Pigeon again for doing that. But yeah, this is a big game, even though they're not in the same corner out. It is a massive game. I think it's about 75 miles between the two sides, but still, this will be a good one. It'll be a decent contingent coming down from Luga, and yeah, I'm looking forward to that one Saturday 8 p.m. And at the same time, unfortunately, because obviously in the Canaries it's an hour earlier, so it's kicking up at the same time, which is annoying. Tenerife against Delta Fortuna, and that is essentially a game between two sides right at the top of this group. So Tenerife, as we've said earlier, have failed to score in two home games recently against Unionistas and then against Bilbao Athletic. And this is a much higher caliber opposition on paper. Let's see if they can get it right this weekend. How about Grupo Dos, Nick?
In Grupo Dos, we just ended the roundup there speaking about Atlético Tañequeño, see if they can get a victory at home against a seriously faltering Ibiza side. But this could be the game that Miguel Alvarez needs to sort of like get that first win. So I'm going for Tañequeño versus Ibiza, 8:30 on Saturday evening. And then my next two games are on Sunday. Real Murcia hosting Teruel. Be interested to see whether Real Murcia can get another win, this time against quite stiff opposition with Teruel. And then is it an Alicante region derby? I don't really know where this is in the world in the grand scheme.
Very close as well, Nick. 20-25 minutes away from each other. Eldo is literally just up the coast, so it's very much an derby there in the Alicantino.
Yes, I was going to say I need to find what the name of it is called, because there's Alicante, Valencia, and Murcia all seem to like just touch around these points, don't it? It's like the three state lines. But definitely Eldense against Heracles, 4:30 on Sunday is a definite recommend to watch.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really interesting one because it's not really, I think, a traditional derby, but as I say, these two teams are very, very close to each other, much closer than, for instance, Hercules and Cartagena are, for instance. So yeah, this should be a good game, and then be interested to see. Eldense have been decent recently, haven't they? And Hercules, as we said, doubts remain, especially on the road. They're not very good away from home, so they haven't got to travel far for this one at least. And let's see if they can get a decent result.
No, definitely. And we are at the end of this episode, talking about all the football from last weekend and looking forward this weekend. My phone went absolutely mental last night, Liam, with buzzing of notifications from Patreon, which tells me that there was plenty of stuff happening on the Spanish Segunda this week.
Yeah, we were really lucky to get an interview with I always like to get a native speaker. We've got some brilliant English speaking fans of Spanish Segunda clubs, which is amazing. But it's really always a treat when and always a real admiration for somebody who is a Spanish native speaker who comes and gives us an interview. And this was a Burgos fan who talked to us about their excellent season so far. So that was great, really, really good. And yeah, it's as always intriguing Segunda, and that'll be the same level of intrigue on display this weekend as always.
Absolutely. And from an El Partido perspective, we have been threatening to do this episode since day one. He basically appears in every single episode, Lee, and I'm sure you know by now. We're talking about the one and only charming man, Manuel Pellegrini. So we're doing an episode with Rahul from La Liga London. He's going to help us talk through the career, the legacy, and just the general impact of one of, for me, the greatest managers and most stylish managers and most successful managers in the Liga history, Manuel Pellegrini. So that's going to be out on Friday. So keep an eye on our socials for all the teases up and coming there. But I will now say thank you to you, Liam, for joining me once again for this episode. It's been an absolute pleasure. Gracias to everyone at home for joining us once again. Keep your eye out for those games at the weekend and go and watch some Primera RFEF football. You will not regret it. We'll catch you next time. We'll see you then. Hasta luego.